Okay, so today we are talking about geometry. As you can see from this infographic, geometry covers a whole range of topics, all the way from lines and points to 3D things to circles to polygons. Today we're going to be learning about some polygons, specifically triangles and quadrilaterals. So here we go. So some triangles and quadrilaterals, we'll be talking about this bottom part of the screen. A couple things to take a note. We need to make sure that you recognize that you've got your notes, and we need to write those things down. Okay, get all of them written down, all these, that, and that. A couple things to learn about triangles is that triangles can be classified using their angles and using their sides. So as you can see, there are 4 names for classifying triangles using their angles: acute, obtuse, right, and equiangular. And you can see the definitions for those. And there's 3 ways to classify triangles using their sides. That's scalene, isosceles, and equilateral. When we're classifying triangles, this particular name, equiangular triangle, is an extra one. It's not used for classifying. So in essence, there's really only 3 names that we use to classify by the angles and 3 names that we use to classify by the sides. I want you to pause this video now, and I want you and your partner, or you and the small group you're working with, to classify these triangles. First, I want you to classify it using their angles, and then also classify it using their sides. So go ahead and pause the video, classify each triangle using 2 names, their angles, then their sides. No, for real, pause the video. Like, pause it, for real. Okay, all right, so hopefully you paused the video. And this is the answer key to those. Right isosceles, acute equilateral. Notice equiangular is a name for this, but it's not how we classify it. We classify it as an acute triangle by its angles and equilateral by its sides. This one's obtuse because of the obtuse angle here, and isosceles because of the 2 congruent sides. Right scalene, it's right because of the right angle. Scalene because none of the sides are the same, as you can see on all 3 of these. Acute and then obtuse. These are all 3 scalene because of the sides. All right, that's how you classify triangles. That's it, okay? So what I need you to do is I need you to turn your paper over, and we're gonna actually classify the quadrilaterals using a flow chart. So here we go. We need to write all of those down. Get all of these written down: quadrilateral, parallelogram, trapezoid, kite, rhombus, square, and rectangle. And we need to actually take a moment and read the definitions out loud to yourself. Read them out loud. I'm going to read them silently to myself, and you're going to read them out loud to yourself, so you can hear how similar yet different they actually are. So go ahead and read them out loud to yourself, just kind of under your breath. Just read them out loud. So one thing that I want you to see is that this is a flow chart. It's important that we see that all of these things down here, they're all quadrilaterals. Trapezoids are not parallelograms. Notice they follow a different path. Kites are also not trapezoids or parallelograms. They follow a different path. One thing from the flowchart we notice is that all 3 of these, rectangle, rhombus, and square, they're all parallelograms. Why? Because they have opposite sides that are parallel and congruent. Okay, they have opposite sides that are parallel and congruent. What makes them special is that a rectangle has 4 right angles. Parallelogram does not. It only has 4 congruent sides. They're all 4 congruent. And a square is both a rectangle and a rhombus. It's got parallel sides that are opposite, all the right angles, and all the sides are congruent. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to flip your paper back over with your partner. I want you to classify these quadrilaterals using the best name possible. Note the important thing that's tough to see is there are little arrows here. Little arrows. Little arrows mean parallel, and the little dash marks mean congruent. If there are 2 dash marks, it's congruent to anything with 2 dash marks. If there's only 1 dash mark, they're congruent to anything with only 1 dash mark. So I want you to take a moment and classify these triangles. Okay, classify those triangles. So take a second to do that. Hold on. So as I was saying, I want you to classify these using their best name possible, and then flip the page over, or wherever these are. Then talk about these with your partner. Figure out if this statement is true always, sometimes, or never. I'll do number 18 with you, and then you guys can get started on these independently. So a square is always, sometimes, or never a rectangle. One thing to do is look at your flowchart. Sorry about that. So the question was, a square is blank a rectangle. So we look at our flowchart. A square is always, sometimes, or never a rectangle. Does a square fit the definition of a rectangle? Ask that question and you'll find out the answer. I want you to talk through these with your neighbor. A square is always a rectangle. Why? Because a square has 4 congruent angles, or 4 right angles, excuse me, which is the definition of a rectangle. It's a parallelogram with 4 right angles, which is what a rectangle is. So a square is always a rectangle. All right, pause the video and classify those quadrilaterals and answer those questions. No, for real, pause the video. Like, pause it. Talk out loud with your partner. Out loud. Did you pause it? Okay, fine. All right. Hopefully you paused it, and then you've already gotten the answers to those questions. Here we go. There are the answers to those. Square, trapezoid, rhombus, kite, parallelogram, and rectangle. Note rectangle because of the 4 right angles. Trapezoid over here because of the 1 set of parallel sides. Parallelogram, opposite sides are parallel and congruent. Rhombus, 4 congruent sides. Square, 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. The one that a lot of people down here trick a lot of people up is a rhombus is sometimes a rectangle. And the question is why? Why is a rhombus sometimes a rectangle? Well, if we go back to that flowchart, a rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. So when would a rhombus be a rectangle? When could a rhombus be a rectangle? I want you to answer that question with your partner. When could a rhombus be a rectangle? If you said when it's a square, you would be correct. So why is a rhombus sometimes a rectangle? If that rhombus has 4 right angles, then it's a rectangle. All right, almost done with our notes here. The last thing we need to do is identify that there's a polygon family tree. So how many sides does a pentagon have? Yes, it has 5 sides. A hexagon, 6. Heptagon, 7. Octagon, 8. Nonagon, 9. Nonagon, and decagon has 10. Awesome. Okay, all done.